Hi, everybody. You're all very welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being part of this Cinemagic chat tonight as part of the virtual festival. And we are thrilled to be able to welcome Holly Hamilton tonight. Thank you so much, Holly. And how are you?
I'm really good. Usual sort of sleep deprivation. I've been up since, well, I would say I've been up since 3:30 in the morning, but this morning it was more like 4:30 because the clocks all went back. So I got an extra hour in bed.
Exactly.
So, not so
You know
bad.
what? We should have scheduled this for just when you finished your shift, because obviously this is extremely late for you.
It's just the middle of the night, really, for
Yeah,
me.
exactly. I know when you always think, oh, if somebody's working in the morning time, sure, we'll do something at night. But then obviously this is way past your bedtime.
Yeah, exactly. But no, story of my life. I'm well used to it, so don't worry.
Indeed. Well, thank you. And tonight we're joined by young people who are, well, really a mixture of young people who are interested in TV presenting, in broadcasting, in media as, you know, as a whole, I suppose. And we'll get a chance to hear from the folks, and we will just be able to answer questions as we go along. And if anyone does want to just put questions in the comment box or raise your hand, either physically or using the wee icons, we can do that. But we'll just kick things off, Holly, and just, I suppose, first of all, what age were you roughly when you decided or you thought that you were interested in pursuing presenting as a career?
Well, funny for me, the attraction was always journalism. I always knew that I wanted to go into journalism, despite the fact that my mum was actually a journalist. Oh, and she tried her hardest to put me off. She wanted me to get a proper job. And if anything, actually, I think it kind of had the opposite effect then, that I just wanted to prove her wrong. You know, she was sort of intent that I get a proper career, she said, something that would actually make some money. So I think in my head, I thought, no, I can do this. I can, you know, and she worked at a local paper. And I had decided then it's probably broadcasting that I wanted to do. I love to talk, shockingly. So it was sort of the ideal career for me. And I was stronger at things like English, you know, and languages and that sort of thing. And I think for me too, growing up in Northern Ireland, you know, there weren't that many people on network news, national news from our little slice of the earth, you know, with the exception, obviously, of the local news. You had Eamon Holmes, and that was about it whenever I was growing up. Now, there's a few more now, but, you know, that was really the extent of it. And I always find, too, that those who did manage to slip through the net across the Irish Sea, they tended to tone down their accent so much as well, you know, that they almost sounded English. And I thought, you know, why would you do that? You know, why can't you have a regional accent or, you know, my accent and be on national news? So I thought, you know, why not me? And I think that's a theme that I want all of you to kind of take away from this today, you know, that no matter what you're thinking about, you have to ask yourself that question, you know, why wouldn't you go for a job? Why wouldn't you go for the, you know, in my sense, being on the BBC or Sky News was kind of the pinnacle for me. And I always said, well, why not me? Just because there isn't a me there already doesn't mean I shouldn't aspire to do that. So that was probably what prompted me to go into broadcasting then.
And then growing up at school, for example, was there a climate where you were able to think of journalism as a real career? Because I know now, you know, in 2020 in Northern Ireland, very much so, you know, media and journalism and moving image is an academic subject on the curriculum. And across the UK, I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of our participants here, but it probably is flown as a flag, as a real career in 2020, of course. But, you know, 10, 15 years ago, is that roughly when you were setting out, you know, career-wise and school-wise, what opportunities were there? You know, did that go hand in hand? I suppose.
Very little. You've hit the nail on the head, really. You know, whenever I think what you guys have access to at the minute, I mean, it is just incredible what experience you can get just from being online, from your own blogs, from YouTube, and from social media even. There's so many opportunities out there. And at school, yeah, you certainly weren't encouraged to go into journalism. It wasn't really seen as a career that you would, how can I put this? But in terms of monetary value, you know, you were very much pushed towards being a GP or a vet, you know, and those things, you know, I knew this is what I wanted to do. So it was quite difficult to try to battle your way through that negativity is the only way I can describe it. People trying to put you off, and not just my mum, but yeah, teachers, everything. And at school, I mean, all we had really, I mean, it's funny looking back now compared to what all you guys have. We had a school magazine and that was it. I mean, there was no anything. I mean, I'm trying to think of all the things that you have access to now, where people have TV studios in their schools and universities and radio stations and all these things. I mean, don't take it for granted. There was nothing like that. Yeah, we had a student paper, and even then it wasn't journalism, you know, it was just documenting photographs of what happened in the year. And for me, it was more about I find myself falling into this trap a lot of just trying to, I've got to be editor of the school magazine because that's what you do to be, you know, to be a journalist, but not because I was actually getting any proper experience from it. So I find myself actually looking for work experience elsewhere while I was at school. So I worked for my local newspaper. Just honestly, it was nonsense, writing reviews and articles about here, I'm going to make myself sound really old now, but VHSs, like, you know, that sort of thing. It wasn't even DVDs then, getting videos and reviewing them just so I could get my name written in the paper. Obviously then there was, you know, no social media, let alone no Facebook, no Instagram, nothing like that. So the only outlet I could find, as I say, apart from the local paper, UTV managed to get in there. Didn't do an awful lot, I'll be perfectly honest, just mostly made the teas and coffees. But it was just about being in that environment and kind of getting to know, you know, because from your point of view as well, if you're starting out, you have no idea. You know, you can sit and listen to lectures and I can sit here and tell you what it's like to be a broadcaster or a journalist. You need to be in there and on the job and learning it. So even though in my head, I think I was kind of trying to flesh out this, what I believed would be an impressive CV that some news editor when I finished school would just have me. What actually was happening, I was learning. I was learning a lot, and you don't even really appreciate it, I think, at the time. You know, things like I did hospital radio. I don't even know if that's, you know, something that's still an option now, but when I went to university, I started producing a hospital radio show. I started presenting my own show, again, while I was at university, because again, at uni, I opted bizarrely to go and do politics with French and not journalism, because I felt like I wanted to do something that I was good at, so I could spend all my spare time doing work experience, getting in these editors' faces, trying to convince them to give me a job someday. And I started actually at a station in Dundee, which is where I went to university. And it was a station called Radio Tay, which is owned by Bauer Media. So that's the likes of Cool FM in downtown, Key 103 and City in Liverpool, that sort of thing. A huge, big chain of stations. Started doing my work experience there. And it was actually just because I was there, making myself visible, making a use of myself. When a job did come up, they offered it to me, and I don't think that would have happened had I not been there, making the teas and coffees, and a little bit more than that.
And that's interesting, though, that you know, decided to pursue a degree in something that you knew you were good at, that you could sort of, you know, fly through, for want of a better phrase, but then you had that free time to then put your efforts into, you know, your CV and getting that work experience and putting yourself in front of employers. So obviously you also had a talent as well, as that sort of enthusiasm. So what do you think it is about, you know, if you are talented, getting your, you know, making your mark, and what can you know, what can help you stand out, apart from the enthusiasm and all of those things that are just sort of givens in order to succeed, for example. But, you know, what is it about, like a show reel or, you know, an audio recording of an interview or something that does help young people then stand out?
I think you're absolutely right when you say enthusiasm and about being there. And I think especially when you're starting out, you're far from the finished article. And it's very kind of you to say that there was talent there.
Of course.
I think there's a talent, it has to be there somewhere, but a lot of hard work, and you're going to make mistakes. And I think the key really is to be prepared to make those mistakes. You're going to get stuff wrong, and people are going to call you out on it. and that is okay.
Yeah.
You're going to be growing as a broadcaster all the time. As a journalist, you're going to be learning all the time. And I think when you're first starting out, just be so aware of that. You know, you're not a finished article. You're going to have editors coming down on you really hard about the smallest things. Funny, at Radio Tay, I sometimes wonder how on earth I got a job there with my accent as well, in the middle of Scotland at a local radio station. What were they thinking? And I remember the managing director even said to me one day, I have no idea why he didn't just fire me, but he said that he was speaking to somebody who said, "Oh, I really like the wee Irish girl that does the news there sometimes, but honestly, I can't make out a word she says." You know? And he said, "Would you just slow down? There's not a train chasing you."
Yeah.
And it was sort of a bit of a, oh, right, okay, you've never said that to me before. But if I actually went back now and listened to some of the audio I put out there, a good job there was no internet and no social media for that to go on. I'd be absolutely mortified. So I think the key is, you know, you're not going to impress in the way, you know, you can stand out by being hardworking and show that you're willing to learn. Honestly, that for editors, it means so much more. That if you are this raw talent that they can mold, they get much more excited by that than someone who comes in, thinks that they know exactly everything and what they're doing. That would be my advice too. Just go in there willing to learn, eager, enthusiastic, and know your stuff. You know, you say things like getting a good interview. Of course, that if you can get a fantastic interview with someone who, you know, an exclusive, basically, of course that's going to get you noticed. It's very hard to maintain that, especially whenever you're first starting out. If you can do that, absolutely do it. But in realistic terms, I think it's, you know, getting in there and showing what they can get out of you, not just what you can get out of them, essentially.
And then touching a bit then on accents and regions, and now very much so, certainly across, you know, BBC and ITV, there are lots of regional accents, and even that is sort of more apparent. I have just noticed even in the last 4 or 5 years. Is that a conscious thing from the powers that be to do that? And is that then something that you think then makes it actually potentially easier for people right across the UK to get in there, and it's not just the, you know, posh English proper accents that they want?
You're absolutely right. See, for all of you guys looking to break into broadcasting and in terms of network news, for example, this is a brilliant time to be starting out, because you are what they are looking for right now. Long gone are the days where you have to have that plummy South England accent anymore. Now, it still exists. It's not something, I'm sure many of you, if you're following the news or following any of the BBC websites, will have noticed there's been quite a few people have left in the last couple of weeks, the older generations, and that's happening right across the board. There is a real sense that they want kind of newer, fresher, younger, different accents coming through to freshen up the likes of the BBC. And as you mentioned, you see it not just there, you see it everywhere. It's so important for people to be able to see themselves, or hear themselves rather, and hear their own accent, recognize their own accent. I think the BBC, for example, is really now getting that. You know, the fact that you can look and you appreciate a story an awful lot more if it's being told to you by somebody with your own accent, you know, instead of some Southern English fella. I mean, it used to be, for example, you know, the news in Northern Ireland would be told to you by somebody in London. There was a new website launched by the BBC this week, all archived from the 60s and 70s, and it's fascinating just looking at a white man in a suit. Really, that's all you got across the board from London, interviewing farmers in Northern Ireland, and you think that would be madness now, without realising that is completely changed. There's a lot of focus on diversity and a lot about reflecting the audience that are watching. They're very aware of that. They're trying very hard to get better at it. Of course, there's a lot of room for improvement, but that is where we all come in. This future generation, and that's where you stand up and say, this, you know, I am the audience. I should be represented.
Absolutely. Well, we have a question from Jean-Christophe. Would you like to go ahead and ask your question there? Interested to hear what kind of accent you have.
Yes, I am an owner of the archetypal plummy Southern English accent. I don't think I'll be smashing it. I was actually
laughing when you were saying that, Holly, because I was looking at the same time as at Jean-Christophe's facial expressions. So yes, go for it. What's your question?
Oh, it's Christopher as well. I put Jean-Christophe Novelli because I think it sounds nice, but my name's actually Christopher. Anyway, my question relates to something you were saying earlier about social media and everyone having their own capacity to broadcast. And I was wondering, to what degree has this revolution in broadcasting and the public's endless appetite for increasingly faster news cycles, how has that affected your job as someone who presents the news through more traditional channels?
I'll be honest, it is very difficult because people have so much access to almost too much information now. Everything is there at their fingertips. They can look on Twitter and unfortunately often get the wrong information. I think our job as a journalist is to take the information that's out there, analyze it. I mean, that's what we're trained to do. And inform people and educate and give them a balanced judgment. A lot of what is out there at the minute is, of course, can be biased. It can be completely wrong, impartial, and people can be very easily swayed by that. So it can make our jobs very difficult when someone is kind of quoting some source from Twitter that's got a blue tick and saying, well, you know, this person has said this, so this must be true. And you're kind of bashing your head against the wall going, well, we've spoken directly to the people involved and they've told us this. And it's actually people have lost trust in journalists because of it. They're questioning what we're saying, which can obviously make our jobs very, very difficult. And it's hard to deal with that sometimes. But on the other sense, in terms of us getting our message out there and us, you know, broadcasting what we want to say, it's made our lives easier. It's a very much a catch-22 situation. It's a love-hate relationship I have with social media. I think it's great for some things. I think it's great that we have 24-hour access to news, and you know, if you compare it to even 20 years ago, 15 years ago, what the audience has now and what the BBC can do with that, working alongside it, is fantastic. But it definitely has its downsides, and I wish we could kind of educate all people of what they should be looking out for in social media and misinformation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Christopher. On the technical front and what you need to be able to do in terms of editing and, you know, just using recording equipment and being out at an outside broadcast, is that something that you should be fearful of, or should you just throw yourself into it? Because I know lots of young people are really interested in presenting and that whole communication side of things, and you know, still, even though young people are savvy about all types of you know, tech related things, it can be something that you can get fixated on if you're not experienced in it. So would you say, Holly, just try it, you know, put your packages together and go for it? Or are there any horror stories as well in relation to tech?
When it comes to tech, there will always be a horror story. There will always be that time when you leave the memory card sitting. Oh goodness, I've got one in particular. It's the sort of thing only happens to you once and never again. I filmed the whole piece, spent all day filming, and it was, you know, one of these things you couldn't repeat. It was happening live, and dropped the memory card on my way out the door. Drove halfway down the road between Aberdeen and Dundee, and just had this horrible moment of, where did I last see the memory card? Oh no! Drove the whole way back, and thank the Lord, found the memory card lying on the pavement. I mean, anyway, so when it comes to tech, stuff is going to go wrong. It's going to go horribly wrong, accept that. But my answer to your question, obviously just throw yourself into it. And again, it comes down to no matter what kind of training you get and no matter what software you've used, that's going to happen to you too. You've been on a course, you've learned how to do Final Cut, and suddenly they throw a completely different system at you and you have no idea what you're doing again. That is going to happen. And it's, again, the brilliant thing about journalism, I think, and what I do, you learn so much on the job, and you have to. You cannot prepare yourself almost. Funny, I'll tell you a story too. Whenever I first applied to work in television, I had never worked in TV before. And obviously my politics and French degree did not help me in terms of video editing. So I had applied for the job, and I had this fear that they were in the interview going to ask me or test me on my video editing. I mean, that wasn't going to happen. It doesn't happen, I can tell you that much, really. I had this fear, so I signed up for a 1-day course to learn how to do video editing. It was like an adult learning course, and went along to it and got the bare bones of it, and thought, right, I can just about pass myself off if they ask me to move, or whatever they need. And funnily enough, they didn't. I still managed to get the job, so that was good. That was my first job in journalism, in TV. So when I started working there, obviously, I had no experience in video editing, but you learn on the job. And again, it's like I said earlier, you're going to make mistakes with it, and that's okay. If I look back at some of the first VTs and reports I ever put together, I would cringe now. I mean, if I was the editor watching them back, I would think, why did she put that there? You only learn from experience when it comes to video editing. Again, it's one of those things that, and same with radio too. Horrific horror stories about radio as well, losing memory cards, etc. But I suppose these days too, you have so much more technology. Back when I started, it was literally just sort of a tape recorder. So there's more likely things to go wrong. There's no backup there. When it comes to technology, don't be afraid of it. I'm sure you're all a lot more tech savvy than I ever was whenever I first started out. And if I can learn how to do it, you'll definitely can in the environment that you've grown up in.
And then in relation to sports presenting everything in relation to that area, is that something then that came naturally to you? Had you a general passion for sport, or then did you really get into that very much so because that's where you were given a big break and a big opportunity?
So this one comes back down, I think, to those 3 words again of why not me?
Yeah.
That I will say to you to always ask yourself. And I'd come up with many reasons for this one of why not me. I really didn't think that I fitted the criteria of what a sports broadcaster should be. Looking back in that now, I mean, it is ridiculous. I say when I was asking that question of why not me, I had several reasons why it shouldn't be me. But actually it was... So I knew that it was something I'd always enjoyed, and if I ever got the chance to do it, I would grab it with both hands, but I just didn't think it was realistic. And then while I was working for BBC Breakfast, I was doing a lot of live broadcasts for them, and it was around about the time of the Rio Olympics, and they knew how passionate I was about sport. All the stories that I was always coming up with were always had some sort of sport link, particularly women's sport. And they sent me out every day, not to Rio, sadly, just in the UK, where I toured around the UK and interviewed the family and friends of the Olympians, and got to grips with some of the sports they did. It was from like shooting, equestrian, all of the, everything you can imagine. And that's what got the sports editor interested. He kind of realized that, she actually knows what she's talking about, and asked me, would I be interested in doing sport full time? And of course, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it was something I'd always dreamed of doing, but never thought I
That's
could.
Incredible, yeah.
Which is completely goes against my own advice all the time, but I'd really just sort of quashed that dream. And that's how I eventually got into sport. And obviously then I'd been working for BBC Breakfast already. So my first kind of live presenting gig, I suppose, on sport was on Breakfast, which is sort of back to front in a way. A lot of people kind of build up to that.
Yeah.
But I was already part of the Breakfast family, so it was a lovely transition, and haven't looked back.
Well, we'll go back to a few more sort of talking points about, I suppose preparing for your shifts on Breakfast and everything that goes into sort of the couple of hours that you're on air. But Ollie is here, one of the workshop participants, and Ollie has just finished delivering the very first film festival in the south of Ireland, specifically promoting the work of female filmmakers aged 10 to 25. Haven't I got that right, Ollie?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I was just going to hand over to Ollie specifically to look around that topic, around females in the world of media and film. So Ollie, do you want to sort of set the scene on that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Hi guys, my name is Ollie, and I'm a festival director, like a young festival director. And the reason why I started my own film festival is because there was less women in the film industry. Sorry, my accent is blended, so it's back and forward. So it's like there was less women in the film industry, especially right now, and it's quite a struggle because working on the set with like young women, some of them are not really confident like working with them, like, so it's very hard to get them do stuff like. And sometimes something to a film festival, they're like, oh, should I submit or should I not submit? Like, and I wanted to recognize that like it's important to have more women in film. And as a BBC like reporter like yourself, like, has that been a struggle for you, like to speak out on a certain topic and to explore it like yourself? Like, no, I know BBC is so big, but like, have you like had an issue like in the beginning of a career, like?
As a woman in general, obviously working in sport.
Sure.
And before I continue, Ollie, I will say one thing. That will be the last time you ever apologise for your accent. Your accent's bloody brilliant. Never apologise for that. But women in general, I think, working in sport at the minute, things are changing for the better. And in general, in our industry, it is definitely changing. You're seeing more and more women in all aspects of what I do appearing. Well, there was a time, I mean, even the camera operators, for a long time, it was just male only dominated. You would not have seen a single woman, a camera operator, which looking back now is actually ridiculous. Why wouldn't a woman do it? But that happens to so many parts of the job. I don't know why it happened. I don't know, was particularly in engineering and technical jobs as well, but it's definitely changing. I've never felt being a woman has held me back in any way, and particularly now at a time when the focus on diversity and about balance with it's particularly the BBC. We have a process now that even the output that we have on a sports bulletin, the aim is 50-50. That 50-50 needs to be represented in terms of male and female voices. Because for so long, a lot of people just went to the same contributors, the same reporters. So now it's taken that a concerted effort to actually shift people's thinking into, no, the women need to be represented here. And you said something a minute ago about women not really finding their voice as well in terms of speaking up. That is definitely still an issue. You'll have noticed it certainly that for some reason, and it's why I use that why not me thing. That certainly applies to women, I would say, even more than men. I don't know why that is. I'd love to know, but for some reason, women do find that they doubt themselves. They don't go for jobs in the same way. If a job's going, they will talk themselves out of it and say, oh no, I'm not qualified. I'm not good enough for that. Hopefully, like I say, that's changing. There's so many schemes and the ways that BBC, for example, are trying to encourage women to go for these positions, particularly at the top. That's where there's really an issue. At the level I work at, in terms of the reporters and presenters, there's definitely equality there. But at the top, they are trying very hard to knock away at that. And hopefully there will be equality someday in that respect. But it's a slow process. These things always are. But I think what you're doing is brilliant.
It is.
Thank you so much.
That's great, Ollie. Thank you, and well done on putting together that whole festival as well. I was following it all on social media, and especially for young people, Ollie, as well, because not that people over 25 aren't young, but that whole under 25 age group. There is a real thirst to learn and to be recognised and to showcase talent. So well done on giving that platform to those especially young people as well. So, thank you. Ross, thank you. Ross is here as well. Ross is particularly interested in screenwriting and directing, but is also interested in TV and media and presenting. Ross, do you want to ask your question just in relation to those sort of key steps? I think privately, I know Ross has been involved in a lot of Cinemagic things, and I've spoken to him before about transferring skills across different areas. So Ross, what areas, I suppose specifically, would you want to find out more about in relation to journalism?
So just about TV presenting in general, and like what's needed to get there.
I think there is a level of confidence. I think that's something you don't come pre-packaged with, I'm afraid. Like I said, I'm constantly doubting myself and my abilities, but It's realizing that you have something a little bit different to offer. It's something Claire did mention a little bit earlier. You know, it's about being able to stand out when it comes to being a presenter. Never try to emulate somebody else. Don't try to be someone else. Don't look at somebody on BBC Newsline and, you know, and think that's the way it's done. You need to kind of blaze your own trail there.
Yeah.
Be yourself. I think that's the most important thing. It's one thing that I get a lot of feedback from people who tell me, you just look like you're having so much fun. You know, you look like you just, you know, you're not nervous and you don't care. Like, of course I get nervous, but I'm just being myself on screen. And that is the thing that I get consistently praised for all the time, that I'm not trying to be a news broadcaster and telling you what the news is. You know, I'm talking to you like we're at the pub and we're having a conversation about whatever the story is. And people can relate to that. They can identify with it. I think what the mistake, certainly a lot of people when they're starting out, they think that they have this idea of what a broadcaster should be and they try to almost act it out. Don't, just be yourself. Don't talk at people. You know, it's that kind of level of communication that is certainly the style that I try to do. It's not just about talking at people. And rope learning lines. You know, we're not actors. You know, you need to understand, if you're working on a story, understand that story inside out. Don't, you know, just rope learn a piece of paper and read it to people. You need to explain and break things down. And it's that I think people, like I said earlier, people can identify with. And that's what makes a good broadcaster, a good presenter. And that's what makes you stand out, you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a million. Well, Holly, going back then in relation to the job that you do, we all see you at the end stage of it as such, in terms of presenting that particular bulletin and getting across that particular story of the day. But what goes into preparing, you know, for your daily bulletins, and what way does it work? Like, do you work so many days in a row and you've got time off then to prepare? And what sort of do you do now? I know it's different because you're working from home a lot, but what goes into preparation and how much preparation is involved?
Oh, yeah, I think it's the one thing that does that normally surprises people, particularly if they come in for work experience, that this tiny little, and you all know, you know, you've enough experience in the industry, that this tiny little 3-minute bulletin, the amount of work that goes into that to gather all the material, you know, hours of filming to probably play 25 seconds of material. And even from my own point of view, it's a lot, you know, research. You know, right now I know I'm on first thing in the morning, so I've all day I've been watching. It's not a bad job now in this sense. I've had to watch the Formula One, you know, watch a bit of the football and stuff, and the Giro, and that's where a lot of it comes down to. It's like I said earlier, you can't really come in and just kind of learn what's happened, particularly with sport. You need to really have a passion for it and know what's involved. But throughout today, I know that there's a crack team of producers who have been working away at getting the best material, cutting the best pictures. They will make a decision as to whether or not we package it up, you know, and do it as a big report at the top of the bulletin, or whether it's just me talking over pictures. Those decisions have been made in advance, and we don't always agree. And that's the great thing about working in a team. It's very much a team effort as well. Bear that in mind. We disagree a lot. I might come in tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. and go, what are we leading on that for? That happens quite a bit, you know. We'll be leading on the Premier League and I'll go, what? Who made that decision? That's ridiculous. I want to lead on this, and look at all the back pages of the newspapers. And there's a little bit of conversation between myself, the producers, the editor of Breakfast, and between us we decide, you know, what the stories of the day will be. But it does take a lot of work, and those are just with sport. The fantastic thing about it's very immediate. You know, I know what's going to be on the agenda tomorrow, generally, unless somebody dies, you know. But I know what the big match is going to be. I know what the big event is. Whereas with news, obviously, it's a little bit different. You have no idea. Now, I worked for a long time as a breakfast producer before I went into broadcasting, and that was an education, shall we say. You're talking 13-hour night shifts where you'll be in all night long from 9 p.m. until 9:30 in the morning. So you come in at 9 o'clock at night and you do not come up for air that entire time.
And
because
that was when you were producing news in general for breakfast?
Exactly, that was news in general. So because the news doesn't stop. So for example, the breakfast program in general, it's a great example because the production on it starts for those big money items, as I call them, the big, the Marcus Rashford interviews and that sort of thing. They're all pre-planned well in advance, maybe a couple of weeks, sometimes even months, if you know that something's going to be happening. So that all starts weeks in advance, but the news breaks throughout the day. So you come in at 10 o'clock in the morning. There's a meeting first thing as they discuss what's going to be the big story. They have no idea what the big story is going to be because it breaks throughout the day. And to this day, I used to always think, so we're at 20 to 8 now. This is the worst possible time that a story would break because it's coming to the end of the shift. You've put all the program together. You've decided, what reporters are going where, what VTs are going to go in, and then a massive story breaks and everything just goes out the window. And you basically have to start from scratch. And then this new team comes in at 9 p.m., takes over, and then they have to work on this right the way through the night.
Yeah.
So it's hours and hours of work. When you see that output on BBC Breakfast in the morning, there are 9 or 10 per sleep-deprived producers who've been working all night on that. So when something goes wrong, which obviously it does all the time, that's some poor producer who's been working all night with no sleep, who gets it in the neck. And I always spare a thought for them whenever the Daily Mail does a front page spread on why the BBC does this, that. They've had no sleep is generally the answer.
It all comes down to the lack of sleep.
Exactly. So it's if you want to work in this industry, you don't get much sleep, let me tell you. But a lot of work goes into what you see going on screen. A lot of work. I think a lot of people think we just make up as we go along. Sometimes it does feel like that, but mostly it's hours and hours of work and gathering.
And so you'd have a team of people, as you say, roughly working to 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night, and then a new team come in from 9 that do the night shift. And then can there be tension there between like what's on the agenda, like if one team have things set up and if there's no big breaking news story, it should be a smooth transition, as in this is what we're doing in the morning. But do you find, or have you found, not necessarily with BBC now, but is that something that can be something to be prepared for in terms of either being adaptable or else sticking to your guns? Both sort of balance.
Completely. And it's that balance, isn't it, of getting that right, where if you've been working on a story all day and you've been banging your head against a wall to get the best guest, the best reporter, the best angle, to work on it, and then a producer comes in and goes, why did you do that? Why did you book this guest? And there is constantly tension around that. I would say that happens every single night. And it is about kind of choosing your battles. That's what I always say. You've got to pick the right battles, and sometimes you just have to accept when you are wrong, and when sometimes there's a difference in opinion. It's as simple as that. But the person who's going to be coming in and taking over, let them deal with it then. That's their baby now. Just pass it on. You will find that a lot in this job, that you will have a difference of opinion with other producers, with your editors. You will have a whole stream of editors to deal with, which is always fun. No matter what line of work you're going to go into, there'll be many sets of eyes looking at your work, judging it, and having very different opinions on it. Some will love it, and then someone else will come along and rip it to shreds. So it is about kind of picking your battles with that, because sometimes you do need to stick to your guns. You do need to go, no, I'm passionate about this. I believe that this is right because X, Y, Z. I've researched it. I've done the work. And sometimes that works. Actually, a lot of times that'll work. And so it's important, to pick the right battles. And if you've done your research and you know what you're talking about, you'll be right.
Yeah, that will stand you otherwise. Then. And thank you. Okay, over to Simon. Simon, go ahead and ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes. We can.
My question was, how does a journalist cope? Like, what are they supposed to do whenever something goes wrong? Like, technology goes wrong, interviews don't come out as planned, stuff like that. What do they do?
Don't cry. It happens every day. Honestly, it really does happen every single day. Sometimes the words I say to myself a lot of the time when people even say to me, why do you not get nervous? And I say, it's only TV. It's only television. I'm not doing brain surgery. Hopefully nobody's going to die in my watch, no matter how wrong I get it. And you have to tell yourself that, because I can tell you in these pressure cooker situations, which live TV can be, don't underestimate it. I've seen grown men reduced to tears. I mean, buckling under the pressure, because it can be very high pressure when you've got 5 minutes to fix something that's gone wrong. I cannot tell you what that is like, and everybody's screaming at you. It's on you to get it fixed. But then it doesn't get fixed. It goes out and life goes on, and it's okay. So I would say it's the sort of thing you only learn having made those mistakes, and they go wrong. And like I said to you the whole way through this, things are going to go wrong, and you don't let it get to you. Don't take it personally, criticism. Just take it as a lesson and tell you what you won't do it again. I mean, I know a producer, I think their best one was they had to cut a picture of Nicola Sturgeon for a promo. So it was Nicola Sturgeon, talking head, coming up, Nicola Sturgeon's she's going to be here. And they accidentally, unfortunately, there was a story running about a gorilla on the same day. So
oh my goodness.
Instead of using pictures of Nicola Sturgeon, a picture of a gorilla came up as the presenters talked over it. Coming up was Nicola Sturgeon with a gorilla eating some grass. And they're still at a job. So there's very little can go wrong that you will be sacked for, especially when it's a genuine mistake.
Yeah.
And things do go wrong. You cannot help it. It's live television. It's why we love it as well. But never, ever, if you find yourself in that situation, take a breath and just realize it's not life or death. It's going to be okay. I'm not going to lose my job. And I've learned a lesson. And that's the most important thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. And that's the thing as well. It's just, in that case, people all would laugh, both the people behind the scene and the people watching. So it's kind of a case of, that probably actually just lightens the whole mood as well for certain things. Holly, what would you say are sort of, for this age group, what are, the one or two do's and the one or two don'ts, just in relation to pursuing a career in broadcasting, just as sort of takeaways, really, as like those kind of final tips?
Don't stand in your own road. I mean, don't be your own obstacle here. There are plenty of people who will be doing that for you. And I would say in my own career, I've probably been my own obstacle more times than anybody else has been. And it comes back to the why not me. Don't doubt yourself. Have a bit of confidence in your own abilities and be aware that you're going to make mistakes. Like I said at the start, go in realizing you're not the finished product. Go in there ready to be molded, because news editors have all different opinions and technical directors and all the rest of it about what they want from you. So you'll be learning differently on the job, and be ready for that. In terms of breaking in from the very beginning, work experience, which I mentioned at the start, is so important. I know a lot of people now don't want to be working for free. I mean, there's ways and means of doing it without working for free. You aren't getting, it's not for free, basically. You are learning so much from doing things on the job, things that you cannot learn from a lecture. Another thing that a lot of people do weirdly is like they'll contact me asking me for jobs, or how to get in. I don't know, if what you should be doing is finding out the names of the editors, of the technical directors, whoever it is who actually is in charge of giving you an opportunity or a job or work experience. Find their names. They're not hard to find. They're usually at the end of credits, or they're on the BBC website or Sky website. Find out those individuals and ask them for a coffee. And don't send them just a vague email. What you want is to get in front of them and have a conversation. Be memorable. If you're not an email, I'll be honest, and don't be put off as well if they don't write back. They're awful at writing back. They never respond to emails. Not that I can talk, I'm just as bad. But if you saw how many emails sometimes that we get, it is just incredible. So don't be put off by that. And there is that fine balance too of then emailing too much. And I know exactly what that's like. I emailed him 3 days ago. He's not written back. What do I do? I don't want to hassle him or her. So it is finding that balance when you're not. But I would say if you can get a sit-down coffee, they're usually in an office somewhere. Obviously, it's a little bit different now with social distancing, etc. But if you can, or set up a Zoom, just try and get your face in front of them so that you're not just a blank email, you know, that Simon Bennett, you know, Ross, you actually, oh yeah, that was that guy that came down here and we just had a coffee that day. Yeah, see if he's interested. You know, it's about becoming memorable to get that initial break. For me, it was such an important part of how I first started in the industry.
Yeah.
Was just kind of hanging around like a bad smell really a lot of the time, but being useful and trying to be memorable, and that actually got me my break on more than one occasion. Whether that was with, you know, in radio or STV, where I got my first television job, and on BBC Breakfast. And then finally, I think it's just go for it, you know, and it comes back to the why not me. If you see a job, BBC Breakfast is a perfect example. When I first started working there, the job came up like a normal job, and I thought, they're never going to want me. You know, do I even have enough experience? I mean, it's ridiculous now. I look back and why I questioned it. I have no idea why, but I actually almost needed somebody else on that occasion to tell me, go for it. What have you got to lose? And it doesn't matter that it's in Manchester and you've never been to Manchester in your life before. You know, don't get put off. Don't be your own obstacle. Just go for it and see what happens. And chances are, especially in this industry, if you take a risk, it usually works out pretty well.
Well, that is an amazing insight. And as you say as well, like, people want to help people who are emerging into the industry. And 9 times out of 10, yes, people are super, super busy and they might not get back to emails. But if you've got that persistence, but a nice manner and, you know, just that enthusiasm, people that work in editing roles and producing roles and all the rest, they do want to help. They're as eager as anyone to find fresh new talent. So
Exactly.
From a Cinemagic point of view, that's what I would just add as well, to let everyone know that people do want to help. And, you know, there's ways and means to sort of signpost opportunities as well. And, you know, you may not be right for that particular program or news strand or whatever, but there's lots of ways that you can find out about getting into the industry. And, you know, meeting somebody for that coffee that could tell you about another station or a job or an opening, you know, so it's just about having that conversation as well.
And funny, I'll add to that as well, you know, I get a lot of people approaching me, particularly about work experience at the BBC, you know, and they think that that's their way in. I would say almost getting into your local papers, your local radio stations, stuff, you know, places where you can be of practical use, where you can actually learn, where you can get something out of it and not just be making the teas and coffees. You know, when you can get a microphone and get out in the job, and you'll learn so much more doing it that way. So don't, you know, look at those different avenues just from where you can, you know, educate yourself and get that experience, and that helps your confidence as well.
Super. Well, Holly, on behalf of everybody, thank you so much for joining us tonight, especially on a nighttime shift when you need to be getting up so early. But we really appreciate it, and just to be so honest and to give that practical advice, because it's that practical nature of things that it's so beneficial to young people as well, and just to find out you know, a bit of an insight to the way things work, and, you know, the whole sort of process of the scheduling of things, and, you know, that preparation that's involved, and, as you say, then believing in yourself and not being your own obstacle. And that's actually funny too, like, you know, don't turn down thinking about a job just because it is in a city that you've never been to, or you know, a place that you've, you know, could never envisage living or whatever. You know, those are things that can be worked out after as well. So, but that was so brilliant. Thanks a million for your insight, and thank you, and we wish you all the very best in your career. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. No, it's been absolutely my pleasure. And honestly, if I can do anything to help any of you, I will do. I don't feel like I'm much use half the time, but you know, I do, you know, Claire, as you said, we do want to help people, particularly young people. We want to help them and get them to where they want to be. So everyone does have the best intentions. So don't forget that. This is such a good point. So fingers crossed for all of you, and good luck with your careers.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.